When we define all the parts and pieces that make up our communities, the buildings literally are around for hundreds of years. So, how we design that street grid, and then how do we think about the energy resources? How do we think about water? And how do we think about the change in climate? All of those are investment opportunities for the private sector to be part of how we build our cities.
Diane Hoskins is the global co-chair of Gensler, and she's joining me here today. Welcome, Diane.
It's great to be here, Anna. Thank you.
So you have just had a panel talking about urban development. Tell us, what was it all about?
It was a terrific conversation with a number of developers, really major developers in the Middle East and right here in Miami as well. And we were really talking about, on the global scale, what is happening with development of our cities and really the focus on sustainability and green.
So sustainability was a big topic. Tell us, what can you say from your experience about modern development and having sustainability in mind?
It is, really the table stakes of any design these days. As we look at urban development, as we look at the development of even a single building, starting with how can we be the most efficient with energy? And also, how do we create an environment for people that is an experience that is, again, giving them the kind of live, work, play environments that they're looking for?
Gensler is a household name in the industry, but just for the sake of our audience, can you tell us about your architectural firm?
Yes, Gensler is actually, we just had our 60th anniversary as a firm, but we are, one of the largest firms, but also, frankly, one of the most influential design firms in the world. I was just talking to someone else about the fact that, yes, we design, the second tallest building in the world, the Shanghai Tower. But we also design, small retail spaces. We design products like chairs and tables. We design workplaces, which is something we're very known for around the world. And we design sports stadiums. So we touch the lives of millions of people literally every single day in the places where they experience their lives.
When you speak about quality of life, sustainability comes in the mix. We can see in the Middle East, particularly, I saw you spoke about sustainability and how important it is for the new projects, new developments in the Middle East and elsewhere as well. What can you tell us about it?
We're learning from how the world has built cities over the last, 100 years, and what were the strengths and what were the things that could have been addressed more strongly. And certainly sustainability is one of those things. Really recognizing that how we use the resources, not just about today, but how does that play out then for decades to come, is important as we design. The buildings literally are around for hundreds of years. And we know that, the street grid of London, the street grid of most of our cities, once it's in place, it's there forever. So how we design that street grid, and then how do we think about the energy resources? How do we think about water? And how do we think about the change in climate and how a city can adapt and evolve and be resilient over those changes in time?
You're mentioning London as an example of a city that's been there for so long. How challenging is it to implement sustainability in this old, especially old European cities?
Well, it takes, again, the will of the cities themselves and also the clients. I mean, we are so proud to be able to work with organizations, with clients that are at the front of this entire effort. They come in the door and they want a project that is sustainable. They want a net zero building. They want their building to be designed not just to today's standards, but that the value of that building is going to endure into the future as well.
So, Latin America has been a big topic of the summit this year. You have a lot of experiences in Latin America. Tell us about it.
We have, I think, 5 offices in Latin America with plans to be really across the entire continent and even with a great focus in the future on the Southern Cone as well. We are, again, seeing master plan projects in many cities, but also all the variety of live, work, and play and thrive, whether it's residential projects, hotels, again, workplaces for a growing workforce across most of our Latin American cities.
Community is always at the heart of every real estate or city redevelopment project. How will the communities of tomorrow look like?
We really saw, especially after COVID, where we all had to, retrench away from places that brought us together in community, that since then, there has just been such a heightened conversation and focus on let's make sure we build places, whether it's in, the district or the community, or even the community within a workplace or an organization, the community within a building where amenitizing buildings with kinds of spaces that we would have never seen in the past. And the same thing with regard to neighborhoods and communities themselves. People are looking for those places that they can go for a walk, they can sit down on a park bench, they can see others, they can walk the dog, and also all the kinds of supporting retail and food and beverage that makes a community a very special place.
One of our FII Institute reports showed that the world faces a $15 trillion infrastructure investment gap by 2040, and private capital is covering just 5% of what's needed. Who is actually expected to fund the rest? And is that realistic in your opinion?
I think there's several questions underneath the broader question you've asked. We talk about private capital is only covering 5%, and maybe that's right, or maybe there's more opportunity there. When I was speaking on the panel, I made the statement that, encouraging investors to look at investment in cities, whether it's infrastructure aspects, whether it's the energy parts of the city, whether it's actual real estate, because all other investments depends upon thriving cities. And those cities aren't going to be able to grow and become those places that attract talent, that create and support the great companies that create those returns. That again, it's that wheel, right? So I think private capital can do more, and I think private capital should be even more interested. The other thing I was saying on the panel is that when we define community, when we define all the parts and pieces that make up our communities, we think about, the residential part, we think about the commercial buildings and offices, we think about the transportation, and, again, there's a lot going on with EVs, with AVs, and what's happening with mobility. But we also need to think about the energy infrastructure and the data infrastructure as being part of how private investment can get involved in supporting the growth of great cities. Data is needed as we rely more and more on AI. And to have, the data, we need data centers. To have data centers, we need the energy infrastructure. All of those are investment opportunities for the private sector to be part of how we build our cities.
At FII 9, I had the Barry Stan, like you said, that the most valuable real estate is data centers.
Yes, and it is attracting tremendous investment. And what we're seeing actually in some of the communities that is that those investments and the strength of the data center, returns can also help to pay for affordable housing, schools, and other infrastructure in the community.
Diane, thank you very much for your interesting conversation.
Thank you, Anna. This was fantastic.